Howdy, 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 and thank you all for joining us tonight. Tonight we are beginning a new series here on the channels, all three channels, not just mine, Clearwater Chad's, and on Joey C's Catalano TV. We're beginning a new series on true crime, and it's going to be the Three Can Keep a Secret If Two Are Dead podcast. And so what we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to be talking about the Jennifer Odom case, which is a horrendous case out of Florida that happened approximately 31 years ago now. And suddenly they have come in with some new evidence in this crime that has suddenly broke it all open, where they have someone that they have charged with it and they are moving forward with it. But you know, we have some questions about things that are going on. We have some real concerns. So before we go any further, let me bring in my co-host for tonight. First off, we have Mr. Joey C. How are we doing, Joey?
Hey, John, how are you? Great to be here. Glad to be here.
Brother. Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing
all
outstanding.
Right. And of course, as always, our good old pal Clearwater Chad, who is in New York City tonight. How are we doing there, Chad?
Thank you, Poe. That is true. Very true. It's great to see you guys.
Great to see you. You look pretty dapper there, my friend. What's the occasion tonight?
Oh, we're for the week. I'm in New York City with my union. It's the annual delegates meeting.
Nice, man. We'll have fun and hope you get all the business settled the right way.
Thank you.
Make sure we don't have another Jimmy Hoffa situation. You know? Keep yourself clean there, Chad.
Will do, Poe.
No Joey Gallows running around, are there? Are there any Joey Gallows running around?
Yeah. Not yet. We'll be streaming from New York City all week, though, on the streets, and we'll be having some fun.
Awesome.
Now, is your buddy, the stutterer, does he live in New York, or where does he live?
His mother does.
His mother? Okay.
Oh, okay.
And Chad, do you have a weather report for us tonight?
Oh, absolutely. We'll do it from New York. We'll do it in New York City tonight, which is pretty similar to where we live. But it's 64 degrees in New York City, Poe and Joey. The precip is 5, and the wind is at 7.
Awesome.
Yeah, but Joey, you're expecting some bad stuff down there, aren't you?
Yeah, this one's scaring us. I mean, they're so detail oriented with this one. They've already announced the schools will be closed Wednesday and Thursdays. They're prepping a little really well. I mean, they always do. They always give you plenty enough time to get out, but this time around is a little bit different how they're preparing. And it's supposed to be a direct hit to wipe out some places. And so I got a big decision to make here in the next 24 to 30 hours. I got to make a decision on what we're going to do. So.
Well, we'll keep you and your family in thoughts and prayers here. It's going to be some crazy stuff. Yeah. So, Joey, you've been following the Jennifer Odom case for some time now.
Yes.
And you've taken personal interest in it. Can you give us a rundown on what happened with Jennifer Odom?
Well, I think I took a strong interest back when I first got with my wife of today, Christina, in 2015 when we moved into our first home and started living together. She got a phone call from a detective from the sheriff's department wanting to talk to her. Now, being that my wife has not always been a person that has been on the up and up with crime, she thought she might have did something and was like, "You got to get me out of here." And I'm like, "For what?" She goes, "Well, you haven't done nothing wrong." And it turned out, he guaranteed her he wasn't there for her. He had to talk to her about a serious matter. So we let the gentleman in, and he started asking her a bunch of questions about a certain name, Jeffrey Crum. And as he's asking her, I said, "Wait a minute, can I interrupt here for me?" He goes, "Sure." I go, "You're looking for a serial killer, rapist type guy, aren't you?" And he says, "How did you know that?" I go, "Just your questioning. You kept asking specific questions. You know how they're just key, like the FBI will ask certain questions about, did you notice anything strange about his, that something he carried that he treasured that might have been on a key ring, or did he brag about, trophies that he had, or show you something to watch that he had, or anything girlish, And I said, "Yeah, that's how I knew by the way you were asking." He goes, "Well, if I asked him, I can't give you that information." But it turned out that Jeffrey Crum, and this is unfortunate, but my wife's first husband was his son. And, wow. and Jeffrey Crum, the one who was charged with another crime, what his mistake was, that one lived and testified against him 25 years later. And he got double life. And now they finally got him last July. They officially charged him with the DNA. And my stepdaughters, that's their biological grandfather. So this is kind of a big hit. That's what I took an interest in, because I wanted to protect my stepdaughters from, if anything, I followed this very closely because, something like this that's been 30 years plus, the family was looking for, someone who did this with the sheriff's department. There's going to be a movie following this, this. And I'd hate to see my stepchildren, or even my wife, who was married into that family, who drug into a movie thing, when she would never let her children go near that man. He was a creepy man. And I guess finding evidence in this case not convict him, but to charge him with the Jennifer Odom case, was they found DNA on a clarinet in a book bag that surfaced 2 years later. This is where I have a little discrepancy. And I got the news thing from the day they charged him, with the sheriff speaking about this. And whenever you want me to cue it up, John, I'll send it to you and you can cue it up.
Okay.
It's kind of odd. As a police officer, I wanted you to really listen to this and tell me if you thought it was odd.
Let's go ahead and put it on the present there, and
okay,
we'll cue it up and go ahead and watch it.
Okay, very good. It's coming your way, John. I think you have to, so I present it, share it. Now you have to bring it up on board, and I have to start it. Just let me know when to start it.
Okay, there we go. Let me let's
start it.
Okay, there you go.
All right, here we go. Let me just start it. I'm trying to start it. Thanks for on. Give me trouble here. Here we go. Oh, sorry.
Alert now, first at noon today, 30 years after the kidnapping and murder of 12-year-old Jennifer Odom. Detectives say they have the man who did it. The Hernando County Sheriff just wrapped up a news conference where he identified the suspect. Fox 13's Aaron Mesmer is outside the county courthouse live with details. Aaron.
Yeah, Matt, I mean, this is the news that this community and certainly Jennifer Odom's family have been waiting for decades. For now, detectives aren't really getting into all of the details at this point about what led them to this particular man as their suspect, as their main suspect in this case. But they are confident 61-year-old Jeffrey Crum is the person who abducted and killed 12-year-old Jennifer Odom back in 1993. Jennifer disappeared after getting off her school bus. Her body was found in an orange grove days later. This is a case that made national, if not worldwide, headlines. This week, a grand jury indicted Crum on first-degree murder, kidnapping, and sexual battery charges. He was already in prison serving 2 life sentences in another case out of Pasco, where he was convicted of sexual battery and the attempted murder of a teenager who had also just gotten off her school bus when this happened. Hernando Sheriff Al Nienhuis says the circumstances in both of these cases were nearly identical. That, combined with DNA evidence and other clues, helped detectives focus on Crum as their main suspect in Jennifer's case.
This is not only a nightmare for any parent. I mean, as Mr. Lonko said, I have 6 grandchildren myself, 3 girls and 3 boys and 2 daughters. This isn't a parent nightmare. This is a community nightmare. This is law enforcement's worst nightmare, to have an abduction of a child and then everything that follows.
Again, detectives aren't showing their entire hand in this case, but they did reveal some interesting pieces of information. Jennifer's classmates told investigators they saw a blue truck following her after she'd gotten off the bus. The sheriff says Crum did own a blue truck at the time, and 2 years after her disappearance, her clarinet case and backpack were located in another part of Hernando County, and we're told that evidence also played a role in Crum's arrest. Meanwhile, the sheriff believes there may have been more victims of this suspect, and he's asking for anybody who has information about him, anybody who believes they know about other cases that may be connected to him, to reach out to the sheriff's office. But Matt, I mean, really, I think what it comes down to here is that this is a case that has plagued this community and this county and 2 counties really for so many years. And now they're finally getting some answers.
Yeah, all these years later, finally some closure for this family and a lot yet to learn. Aaron Mesmer live for us in Brooksville. Thank you.
Now, let me see, John. I believe that. Let's see if there was another one. Actually, where the sheriff, I had it up, I queued it up. I thought I had it. I got to find it again. But there was one where Al Nienhuis spoke, and he made the statement of the evidence was found 2 years later, the book bag in the clarinet case.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. I mean, you find the book bag in the clarinet case 2 years later,
right?
And I'm wanting to know. There's a lot of things that are going to come out that hopefully we'll get more information as it goes. But at this point, it's the really interesting thing is that you have weather, all the different things. I mean, how many hurricanes have come through in that area? in between the time when she first disappeared and when she was discovered.
Yes.
And when they discovered this clarinet case in this backpack. Plus at that time, DNA wasn't as prominent as it is now. It didn't have the regularity like it did. It wasn't as advanced as we've got it now. So these are a couple of things that are kind of, I'm fixating on right now because I have a problem with a couple of them. Number one, how did they know it was her book bag and her clarinet case? How did they pull DNA off of something that's been through that much inclement weather? These are all questions I've got. I mean, I can understand maybe the clarinet case because those are a little more sealed than the book bag it would be,
Right.
but I don't think it's completely waterproof. So, those are some questions I've got. This is it's kind of confusing on how all this came to be. I talked to a friend who is does forensic investigations. They work in one of the labs, and they were telling me that, it's possible if everything's held in perfect situations, but not if it's in they just throw it in a bag and throw it on a shelf.
Right.
It's that the DNA at some point is going to degrade to the point where they can't use it anymore.
Right. And that's go ahead. I'm sorry. Go
ahead. No, you got it.
That was my concern, because if they found this 2 years later, the evidence of DNA would have been wiped out. It would be almost near possible that they could get any evidence off of this. This is why I understand and I commend them for wanting to put closure on this case. I'm not saying that they're wrong, because more likely, I think everybody wants to be him. But my concern is if he's not this person for that case, and the man is either still alive in prison somewhere or alive walking the streets, and they got the wrong guy, I don't think that's the right thing to do either. You know what I'm saying? And that's where I was hoping that if you were able to see more evidence, you might be able to come up with maybe something they missed or something that might be a lie. I'm not going around and saying, L. Neheim, Sheriff, you're a liar. I commend him. I know what it's probably like for his department to go through this for 30 years, especially from the family. There was an interview I pulled up earlier, and I'm looking for it now, where the mother was interviewed, where they showed Jeffrey Crumb in court asking him if he wanted a lawyer or he was going to represent himself, or they appointed him a public defender. And I'm going to find that I'll look for it. And L. Neheim definitely said it came out into 2 years later. So I'm going to find that so we can show that, but I'm going to say ballpark with you on this. I mean, there's something not right.
And Indigo Insights, this is pretty much mirroring what the forensic tech was telling me. I know they have new tech that is like HVAC for DNA that can grab touch DNA, just hairs and saliva. DNA fully degrades within 7 years. So 2 years isn't impossible, just less. The problem that I've got is unless they've held that in the proper conditions, it can be very hard. I mean, you're talking 7 years that it can degrade.
Right.
Did they have the technology at that point to take this DNA sample and hold that DNA sample? Because once you test it and you get the DNA markers off of it, the DNA coding, then you have that in the system for it to be checked against other things. But my problem is, did they have the technology back then? And how did they keep the samples for all this? Like you said, if this guy's the monster that he appears to be, and he's already in prison, then, and this is all up and up, I am fully behind, getting this guy put on there and even facing the death penalty on it.
Sure.
But the problem I have in this case is, if it's not what we think it is, and it's not a good, valid source,
right,
you not only throw discredit on this case, but you throw discredit on his prior cases. And whereas he may still end up getting convicted again, you still take the possibility of him calling for a retrial on prior cases.
right,
And you're going to put the victim of his prior case through all of that suffering and misery again. And one of the big problems you have with that is the time that is in between when he got convicted for the one he's in prison now and now. Witnesses are going to disappear. Witnesses are going to forget things. There's going to be changes in it that could easily end up with him being acquitted on something if this isn't handled the right way.
Correct. Now, what was that actor's name? Robert Stack. Remember that
Yes.
Unsolved Mysteries?
Yep.
He covered that. He covered this, and I remember back then when I watched all that the girl that was survived, and the witnesses said there was definitely two men that were involved in subduing the girls. It wasn't just one. Now there was the blue truck has always been named as a blue pickup truck, which Jeffrey Crum did have one at the time. But for a lot of earlier stuff, it was convincing that two men were involved with this. One was like the decoy, and one was the driver. One did the snatch and grab, and one was there ready to. Well, however they did it, they conversed their chloroform them when they got away from people. But at every given time, classmates on that bus saw something. And I'm just saying today now, because he was convicted, and I want him to be the guy so bad because he's a scumbag. This is a guy that went out and defensive 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old girls and brutally raped them, beat them, and left them for dead, most of them. Now, I know there was a string of about 10 unsolved cases in Florida with this MO, with the same thing that happened that they have. And, it's somebody that did this, or he's not the one for the Odom case, and someone copycatted, he copycatted the Odom case. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I want the truth because I hate to see, as much as a scumbag as he is, he's going to die for it, which he should anyhow, but the family is not going to have the truth, and they got to go with this, with a bunch of BS, which I think is not fair. And I'm not saying that it is. I'm just speculating my opinion here, to be fair to the sheriff's department.
And one of the bad things, I mean, Jennifer's gone and she's in heaven now.
Yes.
But the thing is her parents, to give them false hope would be such a tragedy. They've already had such a loss, and then to be told, hey, there's new evidence, these things are coming up, to go into court and have it all just completely have it blown out because things aren't right or they weren't possible. It's, that's going to be an even worse blow for the family.
Right.
And I hate to see that happen. And my prayers go out to them, and my heart, my thoughts, my prayers, these poor people, you and I you, Chad, and I are all parents.
Yes.
And to lose your child, it would destroy me. I don't know how I would be able to continue on if I lost one of my children.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, if I could interject, Poe, I do 100% agree with you guys. And Matt Cox always says publicly on his stream that when you're a convicted felon, unfortunately, it's real easy for the district attorney to just add your name to the whatever they call it, indictment, right? And then just convict you just because you're a felon. So if he did it, absolutely, he needs to be held accountable. But if not, at least look for the real people. Don't give them false hope.
Right. I agree with that. It's so easy. When things like when major crimes happen, one of the first things they do is they start going through the people that they know, the convicted felons, people who've done similar type crimes, and they're the first ones they always go after.
Sure.
And it's very easy to just put together circumstantial evidence and put a person down. Right. In this case, I mean, I have some real questions about the DNA and the legitimacy of it.
Right.
And that's coming from someone who, as a detective and a detective sergeant, I had to go through, the way that we handle DNA has changed so much over the years. It used to be that if you had any kind of fluid or anything on a particular item of evidence, you never put it in a plastic bag because the plastic bag could corrupt it. Right. You always put it in a paper bag. And now everything goes right into a plastic bag because they've been able to improve the testing. Right. And one of the problems with the paper bag as compared to the plastic is the paper bag allows the moisture to evaporate. Right. So that starts degrading the DNA very quickly in itself just by the evaporation of the fluids. Right. In the plastic bag, it's all held in there. And actually what is starting to evaporate inside that bag can also be tested as well. This stuff right here it's got a lot of earmarks to it that I have to question and raise a lot of issues for me.
And that's the same way I felt. And I knew you would feel that way. And I know you told me when I first told you about this last week, you were going to start looking into it. But there's just for me, they don't have it 100%. And if it's 2% off, that's a problem for me. If you're 98% and 2%, that 2% stands for something. So, and like I said, here's the problem in Florida. And again, I'm going by, this is my opinion, but some of it is factual because of my experience with the law down here. There's some good old boys down here in these smaller towns. Mm-hmm. Sheriffs have been around for a long time. The same judges have been in office for 20, 30 years. I've got a friend who got double life in prison. Now, he was not a nice, I'm not defending him, but he was a known drug dealer. He got trafficking charges. He was put in prison 4 out of 8 times by the same judge. Now, his last conviction, because it was the same judge that put him away 4 years ago, and this is be 20-something years later, which I don't understand how a judge can stay in office that long. It just don't make sense to me. When he saw him, he already convicted him before the trial, say, I've had enough of you. You're going to prison for life. And now people that murder are getting out, and he never sold the children. I'm not defending him, but he sold the people that were going to get it anyhow. You understand what I'm saying? And that's how, because he was a product of the system, and they never gave him any out to learn any trades because they don't do that here. And that's what he did. He was wrong for being that, but to get double life for that, and people are getting out for murder after 30 years, it doesn't make that's not right to me either. So,
well, that's one of the problems with our system is that when you have it's one of the problems, but it's also one of the benchmarks that helps the system is if you appoint someone to a judge's position, it all goes by the whim of whoever's the big politician that's doing the appointing, whether it be a governor or the president or whatever. They're the ones, and oftentimes it can be hard to get someone out off the bench who has been on the bench for quite a long time. It's not unusual. The judge in our local town, he retired after I think it was 33 years on the bench, but he was a good guy, and he wasn't one of those that, even if you'd been in front of him before, he always listened to the case. It wasn't just a matter of I've seen you before, I'm getting tired of this stuff. Now, in this case, like you said, you have someone who's not going. What was it he was convicted of? This guy,
major trafficking, drug trafficking, of narcotics. So
see, we had that problem here in Michigan, and even the comedian Tim Allen. Had it not been for changes in the law or a Supreme Court ruling, Tim Allen would still be sitting in prison right now under Michigan's law that says if you are caught in what they consider possession with intent to deliver over 325 grams of cocaine, then you can automatically get a life imprisonment for it. And he got convicted of that, and that's what he was put in for. That was overturned, or it was, there was changes to the law. But that's what I find really interesting is that you can put someone in prison for life for that, but you let someone go out and take someone else's life, and they'll get 25 years.
Right. That's
like Joey said, with that 2% counts, it has to be 100% when you're talking about a person's life.
Absolutely. And in all honesty, that judge making the statement, I'm getting tired of you, he should have recused himself from that case right off the bat. Right. He knew he was already corrupted in his thought because of his prior dealings with this person.
Let me take it further, John. Mm-hmm. The lawyer he hired used to be a former judge, and his lawyer convicted him on one of his terms in prison, and he hired him as his defense lawyer. Now, how is that even possible? There's conflict right there.
Well, the thing is that, and I'll tell you, to be honest, sometimes it's the judges who retire who leave the bench and go out into private practice. They have the old boy network system working for them. Sometimes they can end up getting you out of charges. I mean, you'll notice you go in and you'll have judges and defense attorneys or prosecutors and how chummy they are with each other. They see each other all the time. So it's really, but they'll tell you, oh no, the justice is blind. We don't play those kinds of games around here. That's BS. I literally had a person that was arrested. Guy had a bunch of crack on him, also had some heroin on him as well. And we had him under arrest. His mother, who's an attorney, shows up with a writ from a judge who has nothing to do with this is a judge that does civil cases, signed a writ for her to order the release of her son from jail. And there was nothing we could do about it. I called our judge and I go, hey, I got a writ from this judge. He goes, there's nothing I can do, John. That guy he's from a higher court and his court overrules my court. We literally had to let this guy go. But, you know, I mean, the system has its flaws. Believe me, it has a lot of flaws. You know, but in this case here, when we're talking about Jennifer Odom, no one's arguing that Crum isn't a POS. He's a piece of crap. All right. There's no one arguing that whatsoever. But the problem is that if you wrongly convict someone on bad evidence or trumped up charges or faked evidence, those kinds of things, that's how you end up causing even more problems in the system as it goes.
Exactly.
Let's see here. Marilee, Indigo, the longer the case goes cold, the harder it becomes to solve, right? Absolutely. The longer you go, the more likely it is witnesses or perps not just pass away. It's people's ability to remember detail-oriented parts of the case itself. They're going to forget things. People get older. People have strokes. People lose memory. They have dementia, Alzheimer's. All these things are coming into play because we're talking about a 30-year gap between when the incident happened and now they're coming around with this case. So yeah, that's a real possibility that you're going to have a lot of people who saw it and were originally witnesses. The only way they're going to be able to testify is they're going to have to go back over statements they made to police earlier.
Right. Now, I found the sheriff in an interview. I'm going to give that to you. I'm not sure if it's the one I saw earlier, but it looks like it. I got it presented to you. This is the sheriff commenting on the case. So let me give that to you.
Okay.
And let's see here. I believe it's Jennifer coming out. I think it's this one. Yeah, I believe. Let me make sure that's it before I send it to you.
While you're pulling that up, I'll read this from Doug. They play those games, Poe. My divorce attorney was friends with a judge and my ex's attorney. I didn't like that. They were always having private meetings without my ex or me making deals. Yeah, and that's the sad thing about it is these things happen. Okay, so what do we got here?
This is the sheriff talking in a news conference the day they charged him. So let me play this for you. Let me get this commercial going.
Feel better.
Like skip. Okay, here we go.
Most of you know already that we're here to talk about the Jennifer Odom case. But before I do that, I've got to go back about 13 months before Jennifer's case, before she was abducted. And in north central Pasco County, another young female who was getting off the bus, and she was in her mid to late teens. She was getting off the school bus and was horribly attacked and sexually assaulted. Brutally is an understatement. She actually had injuries to her head and skull that were very significant, and she was left for dead. Fortunately, the victim survived, but her life was forever changed even to this day. She was a true victim, a good kid. She actually moved from out of state to an area of less crime. Dean's List, just a good all-around kid, and suffered this very brutal attack, a true victim. And these are the most difficult and frustrating cases for law enforcement because these are individuals that are not engaging in a high-risk lifestyle and are victimized. Fortunately, in that particular case, law enforcement was able to get some biological material. And of course, Pasco Sheriff's Office at the time placed that into evidence. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a moment. 13 months later, almost to the day, on February 19th, 1993, most of you know that Jennifer Odom in northeastern Pasco County was getting off her school bus. She was a little bit younger. She was only 12 years old. Again, another young person that we've come to know through this tragedy as being a water skier and just a good all-around kid. Everybody just loved her to death. And she was abducted. Of course, Pasco Sheriff's Office at the time started a massive manhunt, and every agency in the Tampa Bay area was looking for the blue truck that was seen in the area by some of her classmates.
Pause that for a second.
Yeah, hang on. 1 second. Okay, all right, go ahead.
All right, now something else I want to point out, and I wanted to make this point before it got too much further, and I forgot because I'm getting old too.
Right.
Is the fact that back in 1993, blue was in the top 2 colors for pickup trucks in
Right.
that era. You didn't have a whole lot of options. You had white, brown, blue, black, green, and yellow. Pretty much were what you had. It's not like you have nowadays.
Right.
So to say it was a blue pickup truck, it's not going to be that unique of a situation to have that going on. I'm not saying that as a defense for him, but they keep pushing this point of the blue pickup truck. That's one of the most common colors that were out at that time.
And Poe, you said it was a pickup truck. Didn't even say what make, right? That could be any pickup truck.
Right.
Well, that's the thing is we're talking about children who were on a school bus that saw the truck. So, some of them, I mean, it all depends. Like where I was born and raised, yeah, they could sit there and tell you, oh yeah, that was a 1979 Chevy. It was a K20. It was 4-wheel drive, and they could tell you details about it. Other places like closer to larger cities, those kids don't know a lot of those things. They'll just know, oh, it was a truck, or kids are just thinking in passing. They don't even think about it. And that was, it's very possible that they wouldn't know what make or model it is.
I agree. I agree with all that. I think that there was a lot more circumstantial evidence than any hardcore evidence. And again, if the DNA was found up the clarinet case and the book bag 2 years later, and I'm going to find that video hopefully before tonight, or we'll do a recap later on down the road. It's gonna. I've got a lot of questions, and and I'm one of them guys that I'll go to city council meetings. I'll challenge them if I got hard evidence saying that they're wrong. I'm gonna look at the interest of the family here and to find the right person. I'm gonna tell you something.
I think that's important. I think that's important to point out, folks. We're not looking at this as a way of saying, that the police are bad or that Crum may not have done this.
Right.
What our interest in this is the family.
Right.
Jennifer, what happened has happened. Jennifer has passed. All right. Her family are the ones we're wanting to protect, because if this isn't done right and it ends up that this guy ends up getting off of this, it's going to be that much more devastating for the family. I don't know if they're even going to be able to handle it. Right. It's bad. And Doug, at that year, the most common color for a truck that year was red, but I certainly doubt that Crum was driving a brand new 1993 pickup at that time.
I agree. So, I agree. He didn't make a lot of money. He was a drunk. But here's my thing: if like you mentioned earlier, John, if they prove in the court of law that evidence was planted or did not exist, you're right. He's going to come back immediately. There's going to be some high lawyer out there going to do it for pro bono just to get him off of what he's already convicted on. He's going to be wild again on the street at 60-something years old. And here's what I got to deal with. Because now, what if he wants to see his granddaughter, who's my stepdaughter, or the great-grandchild? I got to deal with this guy myself then. And I'm not ready. I don't want to deal with this guy because I know he's a scumbag.
And think about not just you, but think about everybody else in the area of where this guy's going to be.
Exactly.
I mean, all the children that are going to be put at risk having this guy back out on the streets. Think if he gets bond just on a pretrial request based on, and Chris Max said it right here. Let me see here. I want to make sure it doesn't say anything we don't want to put on the air.
Well, he's a good guy. Chris, I vouch for him.
Exactly, Chris. Fruit of the poisonous tree. When the cops are DNA, and it's not just the police or the DA or the DA. It could be, it's whenever evidence is obtained illegally, improperly, or it's evidence that they knowingly put out there that could be wrong. That is fruit of the poisonous tree. That will kill a case in no time. But yeah, you're right. It's going to have to be the police or the DA that are. Look at what was that famous case that just happened recently? The actor, the Baldwin, where it was literally misconduct on the part of the DA that got that case thrown out.
Right.
And that's the problem we have here is if we have that same kind of situation come up and this guy gets off, how many children in wherever he goes to live, how many children are they going to, is he going to put in danger because of this? And that's what scares me.
I agree.
Oh, let's see here. Okay, go ahead.
Play it back now. Here we go.
Yeah.
look at Jennifer as our sister, our niece.
I don't know why the volume is so.
And realize that, man, that is a tragedy beyond tragedies. As we said, other students in the truck other students rather in the school bus saw a blue truck, and that was kind of the focus of the investigation over the last 30 years or so, because it was believed that that driver of that truck may have been involved in the abduction. 6 days later, on February 25th, the unthinkable happened. Jennifer's body was found here in Hernando County off of Powell Road. She too was brutally attacked and brutally, this time murdered. And she was out in that field for some time. We're not exactly sure how long her abductor kept her captive or when exactly the murder took place, but we are relatively confident the murder took place in that field, obviously sometime prior to her being found. Over the next 30 years, Hernando County Sheriff's Office detectives investigated Jennifer's murder. Every viable lead, including those that came from Pasco Sheriff's Office and or the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, or every citizen, from people that had some information to people that were totally off base on this investigation, but they were all tracked down and investigated thoroughly. Even some of the leads over the last few years were revisited just to make sure that the detectives didn't miss anything. I can tell you that the investigation never stopped. In fact, Detective Logan will tell you that on Friday afternoons when I was in the county and wasn't dealing with any difficult situation at the time from an administrative perspective, I would go back to his office, and if my assistant was looking for me, she could usually find me back there talking to George about this or other cold cases. And this was usually the top of our discussion about what we'd done, what we could do, what we hope to do in the future on this particular case. Dozens and dozens, maybe even hundreds of items were tested and retested every time a new technology came out, thinking that that little glimmer of hope that we might be able to get that smoking gun based on that particular test that was done. Hundreds and hundreds, and actually, if we dug into it, we'd probably find thousands of leads over the 30 years were thoroughly investigated. And to give you a little bit of perspective, how much work was done in the last 10 years or so, Nick Mick came in, was about 10 years ago. About 10 years ago, give or take, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children reached out to us and said, we want to help. And one of the programs we have is we go into communities and we take these really old cases and we digitally scan every piece of paper so that you have it archived and readily accessible. And of course, we were thrilled to death that they would be willing to do that. I don't know if they realized at the time what they were getting into, because the people who came, and they had several people who came and did the scanning, they said it was by far the biggest case that they had ever scanned at that time. And I don't know if the record's been beaten. Over 75,000 pieces of paper. And to put that in perspective, think of the biggest book you ever read. It is probably a few hundred pages, and this was 75,000 pieces of paper. Prior to February of 2015, sometime, that biological evidence in Pasco County was tested, and they got a full DNA profile. But that's only half the story. Once you have that profile, you have to have someone to match it to. So it was run through CODIS, which is the National DNA Database. And unfortunately, up until 2015, they had no leads on that particular DNA. But FDLE, we got to really send a big thank you to them. They were looking through some of their cases apparently and found this full profile of DNA and did something that's relatively new, and that is compare that DNA to local DNA and see if they get any hits as far as close matches, meaning somebody who may be a family member. And fortunately, they did identify a family member who happened to be the son of what turned out to be our suspect. So In February of 2015, Detective George Loigren was contacted by then Detective, now Sergeant David Boyer, off to our side here from the Pasco Sheriff's Office. And they talked often. Cold case detectives throughout the country, but certainly in geographical areas, talk and brainstorm frequently. And he let Detective Loigren know that they had a very solid lead in that original case where the person was found alive. They were able to narrow it down to Jeffrey Norman Crum. Many of you may recognize that name from the case in Pasco. His date of birth is 8/18 of 1961. The MOs in both cases were almost identical, with the exception of Jennifer, as we know, was abducted and found 6 days later. So he quickly, almost instantaneously became our #1 suspect in the Jennifer Odom case. Detective Loigren, with assistance from our cold case volunteers, and we have a handful of volunteers that come in and work several hours a week. They started an intensive, because heretofore, I will tell you that we had many suspects in the Jennifer Odom case over the years, but just none of them panned out. And Jeffrey Crum was not one of the suspects that we had listed. So it really kind of came out of left field in 2015. But I can tell you at that point, Detective Loigren started an intensive investigation that took several years. I think he interviewed every single person that he could find, and that was dozens and dozens and dozens, that might have known or been even loosely associated with Crum before, during, or after the abduction of Jennifer Odom. After a lengthy investigation, those facts that he gathered during the investigation were turned over to our state attorney, and we started collaborating with them. We work very closely with them because we want to give them a case that is not only good to make an arrest and make charges, but we want to give them a case that's prosecutable and winnable. And so we continue to work with them on a very regular basis, doing anything they could think of that would help bolster that case. And you have to keep in mind that both agencies have those hot cases that are coming in, and they have to be worked. And the state attorney's no different. If they have a murder and it needs to be prosecuted, they can't put that on hold to do some of these things. So it was a lot of work by both sides.
This is I got to say this, listening to what he's had to say here is it actually gives me some reassurances to it.
Okay.
As he's talking about it, he talks about how as they've been running the DNA profile, as it's been going, as technology advances and things. So that tells me that the DNA that was collected was properly handled, and it's been put through the system time after time after time again. So they have the DNA profile on there, and now they have newer stuff that is, newer techniques that are coming out, and they're able to do a much better check into it. So that gives me a lot of faith in the fact that they haven't just been sitting idly letting this stuff just collect cobwebs in an evidence room. They've been constantly going at it. I have a feeling this has been one of those things where they're not, this has been such a thorn in their side.
Right.
They've been wanting to get this found for so long. And that's a really good point there, Tommy. Gotta love the familial DNA methods for investigation. Absolutely. I mean, think about it. You grow up with it doesn't happen every time, but you have a lot of people that grow up in a family where criminality is part of the DNA of the family, and it rubs off on the kids just as well as it does, anybody else. And so here it is. You've got, in this case, you have the son whose DNA partially matches because of the father's DNA in him. And then that goes on to, helps lead them into cracking this case on this. I'm pretty happy with how he put this all out there.
Now, like I said, I knew they had the profile, but like the 93, this happened. 2015, when I got to break out, I'm going to present just to show you, this is how they got it. If it wasn't for, and I commend him for the one thing he did. He could have, you know, he didn't give him problems. He immediately gave him the DNA. He wanted to, you know, get to the bottom of it was his father or somebody in his family, and so I commend him for that. But this was the son who was, and I just shared it with you.
Okay,
this is him. This is my wife's ex-husband, you know, her first love, who got 30 years, you know. So, and that's the father of my stepdaughter. So I mean, that's him, and he did the right thing. I mean, he's going to see daylight, and I think he would have made it harder for them. It could have been rough on him, you know. It could have been bad for him.
Oh yeah,
you know. So I'll stop that. But that's him. That's the son. Now I have a bunch of other videos here with interviews and cases. The unsolved mystery one was one of the ones that showed a lot more. But I'm glad that, you know, like I said, I'm not no police officer. But don't get me wrong. I respect law. My grandfather was law enforcement for 30 years. I have the highest regard. If law is done right, I'm a big on board type of guy. Even if it's me that did something wrong, if I'm wrong and I get caught, I deserve to be prosecuted. I do not believe in, because, hey, you know, I don't believe that. I admitted my guilt. Like I said, it was a white collar crime for the time I went to prison. And I've done a couple other white collar things, stupid stuff as a young man that I've done because I had a habit. But I've never, ever disrespected law enforcement. When I get pulled over, I'm courtesy. But when I got an officer in front of me that's trying to break the law by, you know, demanding certain things that he doesn't have to have, when you get pulled over for speed, here's my insurance, here's my valid driver's license, my window's halfway down, here you go, sir. It doesn't need to be any more questions asked. That I got pulled over on a speeding ticket and I was asked, because I'm Italian, they threw in, are there any bodies in the trunk? That's an Italian thing in Chicago. They put a lot of bodies in trunks. So he was stereotyping me. You understand? I didn't appreciate it. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, you know, it's like you said, we're not downing police officers here. I respect the law, believe me.
Well, I could tell you right off the bat that when you run a person's name in the systems nowadays, it automatically, if a person has a felony conviction, that's going to come up in the readout for it. It's going to be right there on the computer for them. And I can tell you that was going on 20 years ago. You know, so that they're going to know right away that you are convicted, that you're a felon, that you can't possess a gun, you can't do certain things.
Correct.
And all of that comes right out there, right in the computer for them. And, you know, like you and I have talked about, because a person has been convicted of a crime doesn't make them a criminal. All right. It's the continuation of, you know, the continuation of the bad acts. That's the stuff that makes you a criminal, is you continue going down that road, keep, you know, committing the same, you know, crime after crime after crime. Those are the things that are going to end up putting you in trouble. But just because you got convicted of something doesn't mean you're a criminal. All right. And I mean, unless it's, you know, my limits, you hurt someone, you put people in danger, or you hurt children. You do any of those, that's all. That's it for my radar right there. But the fact is, you know, it's the non-violent crimes, the things like that, you know, sometimes I wonder why we even have laws against certain things that are out there. It seems like some things are more just as a way to be able to punish people than they are to actually stop crime. So.
Right. Now, I don't know if you knew this, but back when President Trump was president, one of his things on his agenda is he was going to close all the camps up on federal because there were so many white, stupid criminals put behind prison, waste of money, that they'd rather put them on house arrest at home with a monitor and let them be confined to their home because I mean, I'm not saying any drug addict that became a drug addict went out and hurt or robbed or beat an old lady up or hurt a child. They should be in prison for the rest of their life. But someone that had a habit because they were strung out by pain medication because the doctor put them on it and then took them off and they had no way to heal themselves, and they're first-time offenders, you put them in prison. There's more people in the system that are first-time offender drug. Get them help. Get them all the help you can get them. Don't throw them into the prison. I mean, it's just not right. You know.
I mean, we look back through history. We got the Jim Crow laws, which were specifically designed to help stop black people from being able to vote, because if you were a convicted felon, you couldn't vote.
Right.
So they created these laws that literally made everything a felony. Right. So and it was easy to convict you on it. So they turned around and they started putting more and more and more people under the felony charges so they couldn't vote. You know, the history has a lot of the country has a history of a lot of things like that that have happened. But you know, to me, it's just crazy that, you know, how some people look, oh, you got convicted of this, well, you're a piece of crap or whatever. No, you know what? I know people that are convicted felons that are better people than some of the most upstanding church going people you'll see out there. People who like to put on a good face in public, but behind scenes are some of the dirtiest, nastiest people you ever saw. And I know people who are convicted felons that literally are better people than these big, high and mighty churchgoers.
You told a great story last week about the lady that was arrested for the first time that you helped, and you were kind to her, and you just wanted to help her. And because you saw something that it didn't fit, you're not an everyday common criminal. And you got even one of your partners or one of your fellow officers got mad at you for that. And you're like, I'm not going to be rude to that lady when she doesn't, not being rude to me. So, I mean, there are decent law-abiding police who take the oath, to believe in the oath, and they believe in what it says on the side of the police. We're here to serve and protect the people. And that's why I think I took to John when Chad first told me, because I watched John and I know the man without a doubt, when he was in that powers of carrying of the police badge, he did everything the best way he could and the right way he could. So I know that without doubt by even just talking to the man. And that's why I do this with John. So,
well, my personal integrity couldn't allow me to be that POS that a lot of guys that I was working with were.
Right.
All right. And just who I am personally would not allow me to sit there and treat a woman who is a single mother who is raising her children. And the only reason I was having to arrest her was because my department had a zero tolerance policy on on suspended licenses. You know, I had no choice. I had to, because my department had a zero tolerance policy on it. But that didn't mean that you treat her like she's a criminal or she's garbage. You treat people like they're human beings.
Right.
And to me, that was important. And that's why if I went in to certain areas, people would talk to me that wouldn't talk to other officers, because the other officers, they would, you know, handcuff them, give them a nice little tap from behind, stuff like that. Not me. I didn't play that game. You know, treat people like people, because you know what? You might need that person somewhere down the road.
Yeah.
There's I remember one time there used to be an area in the city that I originally worked for where they had a tree that had this big knot, the big hole in it. And that's where all the dealers would keep their stash. They'd walk up, put their stash in there and hang out by the tree. Well, I rolled up on a guy. He didn't see me. I'm trying to arrest the guy. 3 or 4 more people come out of nowhere and they're trying to fight me. This guy comes out and jumps right in the middle of it, helps me get the guy cuffed, get him into the car, kept the people off of me. The guy that was helping me was someone I had arrested probably 10 or 15 different times. But because he knew that I'd always treated him good. I had never treated him like he was a POS. There was no way he was going to let them just attack me for doing my job. And that's exactly how he said it. So
very interesting. Chad, you got anything to say on this?
Well, on a different subject, and I'll tell you the one person that I think it's a good thing that he's in jail. We have jails for people like this. He was convicted, and it has nothing to do with Shuli's, but it's Shuli's producer, the guy that was convicted of over 6,000 images of you guys know what.
Well, they should throw the key away and put him under the jail. That's how I feel about a man who does that to children.
Yeah, I knew you would. Yep.
You know, but here's an example. I saw some kind of video the other day, and I don't remember where they were going to make a felony arrest. It was, or maybe it was some type of arrest, and the guy handcuffed, and somehow the one officer went down having a heart attack. So the inmate got the keys, got uncuffed, and started to run, but saw he was having came back and helped the officer, and then gave his hands to the officer. Now the officer recuffed him. I don't know. They didn't play the whole thing if he went to jail. Now, he would have not. But I guess the officer had no choice. He had a warrant, so he had to take him in. But I wonder if that officer did step up and say, he saved my life. You know, can we do something here? I would believe he probably did, just knowing how the inmate had a chance to go. The guy went down. He took the keys. He didn't harm the officer. He got uncuffed and was running. Saw that he was really having a heart attack. Went back and helped him. Saved his life. Got on the radio and got him help. And then stood up and he had made the arrest, but they didn't show anything past that. And I was just curious if, and just by looking at the officer, I could tell he probably went to court and helped that guy from that point on, because I don't think he was being arrested for something serious. But like I said, I've seen a lot of things, like you said, just because you're arrested. I get every day so many nasty comments and threats to me that I'm just a straight piece of garbage, that I'm a felon. Because I'm a felon, I'm a piece of garbage. I'm a low-life piece of shit. And you know what? That's not true, because I care. I want to help people. I help everybody I can. I've never been rich. I was born poor. I unfortunately I was forced to retire early because of disability, but I pay my bills. I don't cheat my bills. I have a roof over my head. I provide and always have the best I could. And I just getting tired of it, that these people, that what they say to you on a daily basis, it just wears and tears you down. It's just terrible, you know.
Well, the thing is that there are a lot of people that's what they love doing. They love trolling. It doesn't matter to them. But what they don't realize is they're one or two words away from being felons themselves. All it takes is the right situation, the right time, and saying the wrong word. And next thing you know, you get that wonderful little catch-all that the feds have, and that is obstructing. And that's a 10-year felony under federal law. You say something to a federal agent and it was wrong, whether you meant to or not, they can still charge you, because it still falls under the parameters of obstructing a federal agent. And that's a 10-year felony. So many people don't realize how close they are and how many of them have actually committed felonies, but they want to sit there and they want to judge other people in situations. The difference is you got caught, they didn't. And it's that simple.
I agree. I have another one of the Jennifer Odom things that I'm going to give it to you. I think this gets more interesting if you watch really detail of this. Let me see where I have it here. I think, okay, let's watch this one. I think this is a different one. I think, let's try this. Let's see, wait, if I got to share it, present it, share. I believe it's this one here. Is that the one? I believe, yes. Share. You should have it now.
And Marilee, thank you for that email from the other day. I hate all these channels putting all these commercials in. There you go.
It started in Pasco County and ended tonight in Hernando County. 12-year-old Jennifer Odom was last seen getting off her school bus at the end of the day back in 1993. New tonight, more than 30 years later, police have arrested the man who they say is responsible for her kidnapping and murder. She was last seen getting off her school bus near her Dade City home, but she never made it there. The search for her lasted more than a week before her body was found in an abandoned orange grove in Hernando County. We have talked to people in that community many times over the past decade, including her mother and sister. The lead detective telling us today more than 40 agencies over these 30 years have helped with this case, a case with so many questions, but the biggest one did not have an answer until today. ABC Action News reporter Eric Waxler is outside the Hernando County Sheriff's Office with how, after all of these years, detectives were finally able to arrest a suspect. Eric?
If you've lived around this area for a long time, you've no doubt heard about the Jennifer Odom case. It's left so many people with so much heartache and so many questions over the years. Well, today here at the Hernando County Courthouse behind me, a judge told Jeffrey Crum the new charges against him. They are first-degree murder, kidnapping, and sexual battery. Crum is already serving 2 life sentences for a similar case in Pasco County, where a teenage girl survived his attack but was left permanently disabled. That happened about a year before Jennifer Odom's murder, but it wasn't until 2015 that Crum was indicted. Investigators say evidence from that case helped them link Crum to the Odom case.
After 30 years is a lot to get through. I guess shock is one word, happiness, joy. I mean, it's a horrible act that occurred, so you're not really getting what you want back, which I don't have that power to do that, which would bring the child back to them, but at least this individual is going to pay for what he did.
The sheriff's office says Jennifer Odom's parents are still processing this moment that they've been waiting a long time for. We have not heard from them yet. The state attorney, meanwhile, says they do have enough evidence to go for the death penalty in this case. Jennifer Odom would be close to celebrating her 43rd birthday. Live in Hernando County, Eric Waxler, ABC Action News.
Eric, thank you. We wanted to give you a little background information on this case and the timeline. Jennifer Odom was abducted after getting off her school bus on February 19th, 1993. That was in Pasco County. 6 days later, on February 25th, 1993, her body was discovered by a couple searching an abandoned orange grove in southwest Hernando County. Let's take a look at the map here to show the distance between these two locations. The red dot near the bottom right of this map, that's where she was abducted. The red dot towards the top, that's where her body was eventually found. There's about 12 and a half miles between these locations and across county lines. It's very rural and very quiet. Police say it was the perfect place for Jeffrey Crum to conceal his crimes. Then 2 years after her body was found, a couple looking for scrap metal in a rural area of Hernando County found a backpack and a clarinet
2 years later, John,
that belonged to Jennifer Odom. That was about 15 miles from where her body was discovered. But the clothes she was wearing when she vanished have never been found. Over the last 30 years, countless detectives, law enforcement, and volunteers have had a hand in this investigation. This has been a case that has captivated so many in this area. It even made national headlines. And now, hopefully, this is closure to those who knew and loved Jennifer.
The future of anxiety and depression treatment is very exciting.
I'm still troubled with the 2 year later thing, but you know, stranger things have happened. It's not like it's a unique thing that's never happened before, but I'm still, you know, again, how many hurricanes, how many storms, how many rain showers, how many animals have been near that stuff.
right.
And, you know,
This is the point I was bringing up to you. You heard it. You heard it right from them. Showed the proof. 2 years later, a hiker found this stuff that 14 miles away from where the body was, and it went. It was in the mud. It was in the rain. It went through everything possible. Tell me, how can they get DNA off of that?
I'm you know, the only thing I can think of is inside that clarinet case and the way that they seal. Yeah. But I mean, what would he be doing with the clarinet case?
I don't think he opened it up. I think he just dumped the stuff after whoever killed him, killed him. And I'm not, like I said, they charged him. But this right here, if they are lying, I'm just saying this. If they are, and I'm not saying they are, if they really did, they're going to present a big problem for this Florida, for that area, because he will get out on the other case.
Yeah, it's and the thing is, I mean, we've talked about other, you know, about like with bite testing and bite recognition and using that as identification of a suspect. How now the dental recognition for bites and things like that is now being found as not as credible as it's been. How many people are imprisoned because a expert in bites has come on and said, oh yeah, well, that's definitely this person. I've looked at their dental records and I'm looking at the bruising. And then, you know, now they're finding out that the dental recognition stuff isn't what it used to be. So, you know, there are people that are in jail that should never have been in jail, but it's because of, yeah, Tommy, you got it, junk science, because someone comes out of somewhere and says, hey, I have this new technology. Oftentimes I don't trust this new stuff they come out with. It's just like repressed memory, things like that. And then they were finding out that you had people that were actually implanting memories into their patients. So these things come and go. I you know, DNA is one thing that's very hard to fake. You can't, it's very almost impossible to fake DNA. What's not hard to fake is planting DNA on something and then having that DNA miraculously discovered. So it worries me. Yeah, it's that really, really bothers me that something like that's happening. I just don't, you know, I wonder about it. And I hate to see this kind of thing end up causing this person to be able to get back out on the streets, even for a short period of time. Who knows what kind of destruction they can cause if they get back out there.
And if he does get convicted, but he's still the wrong person, the family are going to, when they pass, they're going to go past thinking that it was all solved, and it wasn't. And that's what my whole point is. It's the family here that if you got to worry about closing this case that bad because people are in your side as a thorn, come on, you got to be stronger than that, man. You got to be stronger than that.
You got to stand up, and you got to be by ethics and honor. You can't just fudge things.
Right.
And Tommy's got a good point. Saliva recovered from around a bite mark is more reliable than the bite mark technology.
Right.
You know, that's the thing. I'll give you a case. There was and he's passed away now. He was a good friend of mine. He was a solid police officer. He's one of those people I looked up to as a mentor. There was a missing persons case where a woman, and she was an addict. She had a lot of trouble. She went missing. This guy searched for her for 3 years and could not find anything. Constant trips to the medical examiner's office, kept refreshing things in the computer system, keeping her memory out there. Her family put him through the ringer on the whole thing, talking about how horrible he was and all that. He went in for a doctor's visit. They sent him to the hospital. Within 3 months, he had passed away. His whole body was filled with cancer. A month after he passes away, they find her. She had been in a deep freeze at the medical examiner's office. They never took a DNA sample or fingerprints of her, and it put her back in this deep freezer and pretty much just forgot about her. Now, the family, and I went, I let them know how I felt about it, because they literally let this man go to his grave thinking he had failed them when he had done everything that he could. And, the family's like, well, it's over with now. No, it's not over with. You destroyed this man's reputation all because you weren't getting what you wanted. And that's where problems like this lead to people getting out of jail. It's a serious problem. And it happens more than people want to admit it.
I like to get just an opinion from the chat. If you think there's discrepancies, can you put a 1 in the chat? And if you think that they got it, put a 2 in the chat. Just curious to think what you think about this, because it to me, like I said earlier, and Chad agreed, that 2%, if it is, you got to have all 12 jurors to convict you. If one has doubt, you have a hung jury. You understand? So it's the same thing in this case here. If there's discrepancies, then there's a problem, and it's going to be the justice system here. Now, if they get convicted because of similarities and people just want to wrap this up, again, I understand and respect that, but it's not right. It's just not right in my book. So.
Right. I just think that's my problem with this case. And cases have been thrown out on a lot less than this.
That's true.
So they they have to make sure they have crossed every T and dotted every I.
Right.
And it's going to have happened from the point that it was collected till now. Let's see. That's very interesting. But will the judge allow the discrepancies to be known in the trial? See, here's the problem, Kirkland, is that the judge may not allow those in that trial, but what happens on appeal?
Right.
An appeals judge, and I'll tell you right now, I have talked to judges who have allowed cases to go through, allowed there to be a decision and someone be convicted of a crime, and then they turn around knowing that it's going to go to appeal. And I've talked to judges and they were like, I always err on the side of caution in a case like this. And if the conviction's what's going to go through, the conviction's going to go through. That's for the appeals court to handle. That right there is not being a judge. That's being someone afraid to do your job. And that's a real thing happens in this country. And that's a real problem. A lot of judges will take the easy road out and let the appeals court handle it.
Correct.
And it happens a lot. Now, think about if a person was innocent from the beginning and they spend that, and generally it's a year to 3 years before a case is actually gone before an appeals court and they get a decision. That's a year to 3 years this person sits in custody. What kind of justice is that if the person was innocent?
Right. Here's a third case scenario that could happen. If they feel this could go this way too, and I'm not going to shut this out because it has been known to happen in life. The third scenario could be they know that they can't get this conviction, and all of a sudden it gets to the prison or wherever they're holding him to take him out. And they get some inmates to just bash his head in and kill him because they get their justice that way. That could happen too.
Absolutely.
And there you go. Chris Mack. Chris Mack's been on point tonight, man.
He's a good guy.
The appellate judges are much more exacting about the procedural stuff. They're always hyper aware of making sure that trial judges don't rule on things outside of their purview. I can't say it better than that. Great job on that one, Chris. You know, and these. I'll give you an excellent example of where an officer and a DA decided that they were going to go for the flash and drama rather than getting things right. There was an officer that I worked with who one day he just wasn't there, and he wasn't on the schedule, and everybody's like, what the hell's going on? Then we find out this guy has been charged with some kind of lewd behavior. And as it goes on, it just becomes more and more and more bizarre. They're saying that he was in his pickup truck and that there were girls in the back of the bus, saw him in his pickup truck, saw him doing something to himself, and they ended up charging him for it. There were a lot of problems with it. Number one, the girls in the bus could not have seen him doing that. Literally, he would have had to been bumper to bumper with the bus for them to even see halfway down the steering wheel. They could not have seen him inside the truck doing that. Secondly, there was a known sex offender who lived in that area who had a truck that was almost identical to this officer's. But the detective in that case saw it as a chance. I'm going to burn another cop. I'm going to build my career off of this, and pushed it through. They got to court and they started pulling the girls up for their testimony. They asked the girls, you said this to the detective. No, I didn't. What do you mean you didn't? I didn't say that to him. That's what the detective said. Well, you signed it. Well, he handed me a blank piece of paper when I first sat down and made me sign it. Well, what do you mean made you sign it? He put it in front of me and said, here, sign this. The case got thrown out. This guy got cleared. He had done nothing wrong. And the main girl who was the main complainant in it actually admitted on the stand she had made it up. But the detective who was investigating it and the DA saw this as a chance. They put it out all over the news. It was in every paper on every local news station that they were doing this. Put this guy's picture on there, labeled him as a pervert. To this day, there are still people who look at him as though he did something wrong, even though he didn't. All because these people were so wanting to get this conviction and burn this guy just so that they could help their own careers. When he was cleared of everything, not a single thing showed up on the news or any of the newspapers. That's the reality, folks. That thing happens a lot. Well, Tommy, the problem is that that detective went on to become a chief in that department. They knew he had falsified actual interviews with these girls. They knew he had made things up. They knew he didn't investigate it properly. They still overlooked it because he had become literally a hero of that community. This guy lost his job, had to move out of that city because his name was crap. Move into another city, hoping people didn't know who he was, and had to restart his life in a whole different career because of one person's greed and wanting to make a name for themselves.
It happens a lot. It's very common. I mean, it's common in federal prosecutors. Bottom line, their main goal is to become a federal judge. And the fact that they got immunity to lie, they got immunity from any lie in the case, that's just not right. It's just not right. It's just.
Well, it's just like when I went through, they told us about it in the police academy. and then I learned more about it when I went through detectives training. I can literally, if I were interviewing you for a case, I could literally sit down across the table from you and go, you know what, Joe? Got your prints, got your DNA right here. It's all in the paperwork. Now you have a choice. Work with me, let me get this solved, or your butt's going to jail and I can't do a thing for you. I could do that, and it's 100% legal. But if you sit there and you lie to me, you go to jail.
Correct. But on the flip side, if that person knows you got the wrong person, if he's smart, he's going to say, I decline the answer. I want an attorney, and it ends right there. So, and that's what happens. If you're smart, if you didn't do it, you're going to do that. And I understand the plea. If a guy really is innocent, the first thing he should be saying, and I'm done talking to you, get me an attorney. If he really is not the person. But a lot of them don't do that. They show nervousness. They're scared. If you didn't do nothing, why are you scared? Why are you nervous?
Because good people and innocent people have gone to jail.
Correct. But
that's why
I understand that. But if you didn't do nothing and you know without a doubt they got the wrong person, you just tell them respectfully, sir, I will let my lawyer handle this. And that's the best way to do it. That's why a lawyer will tell you, if you're innocent, especially if you're innocent, do not talk to the police when they interview you. Do not.
Well, and I'll tell you this. I could always tell who were the real criminals as compared to the people who weren't.
Correct.
Because the people that were the real criminals, you could sit there and have every bit of evidence that you needed, put it right in front of them, and they'd sit there and go, wasn't me.
That's right. That's true, too. That's very true. I've seen it happen. On the flip side, I've seen that happen.
And what happens is you get a lot of people, they get scared in those situations, and it's not just a matter of they're worried about other people have been other people have been convicted for lesser and things like that. But you get people that, this is their first time ever dealing with the system, and it freaks them out and they don't know what to do. My advice, and I never had a problem with, I know officers that have literally acted like they didn't hear them. But my advice, if you ever have to deal with the police, I want an attorney. I refuse to say anything else.
That's the best way to make sure that you get a proper questioning and a proper trial as it comes to it. It is the best way to do it. Take your Fifth Amendment right and ask for a lawyer. That's the best way. Because then they can't talk. Once you say lawyer, they can no longer question.
And believe me, there are officers who will sit there and act like they didn't hear it.
Right.
Or there are ones who will try to talk you out of asking for an attorney.
Right.
Oh, you sure you want? Because if you do that, all bets are off the table. Any help I could have given you is gone then, because the minute your attorney gets in here, I got to put all this evidence I got against you in there, and I'm going to burn you, and I'm going to ask for the maximum sentence. There are officers that will do that.
You're right. I agree with that too. That's why it's a tough job. It's a tough job. I commend anybody that goes through the academy, anybody that puts their life out there for the money they make. I tell you what, I used to say, you go on the street for $30,000 a year and put your life in jeopardy, and you're a good cop, and you got a risk of not going home every day, you're insanely nuts.
Well, it's because it's not a matter of being about the money. And I will tell you, being a police officer put a roof over my family.
Correct.
It fed my family. It gave my kids insurance.
Correct.
I could have made a whole lot more and gotten all of the same benefits working for GM, Ford, or Dodge.
Correct.
But you have to have it here.
Got to have the passion. It's got to be in you. That's right.
And that's the thing. You have to be committed to doing the job. Now, there are people who get into law enforcement because they were bullied in school. This is their way. They're going to prove they're important. I mean, if you look at how many police impersonators there are out there, there's a reason why they're police impersonators, because they think we have some grand authority when we don't. We have actually less rights than citizens do.
You know what amazed me is how many of the street gangs put somebody in the police academy, the ones that never got arrest records, and put them in thinking we got one of ours in the police academy, one of our guys on the street who was loyal to the gang. And there's a lot of that in big cities where cops are former or still gangbangers that are posing as cops.
Well, I mean, Sir Crepitus, and I think he had to dip out. I know he's got some family stuff going on. He's doing there. He can attest. He retired from the LA County Sheriff's Department. They had a real problem with people who were actual gang members
becoming police
doing that exact same thing. When I was out, we knew all the local gang members in around our area. We knew them all, so they couldn't do that stuff with us. What they were doing was they were turning around and they were recruiting juveniles, people under the age of 16 years old, and having them commit the crimes because all they do is send them off to juvie.
Correct.
And while they were in juvie, that was pretty much like boot camp for gangs and for being a criminal.
That don't fly no more. They get tried as adults today now. That worked 30 years ago, 20 years ago. That don't work no more. If a kid, I asked a prosecutor, I just want to ask a question. How do you prosecute a child 13 years old that murdered some? It goes about, did he know what he was doing at 13? Probably. Did he potentially get that gun? There was like a 12 or, I don't know if it was 10, 11, 12 in Michigan. Did this happen in Michigan where the kid went upstairs, got his mother's gun? She was in the laundry room doing his laundry because she wouldn't get his Amazon. Somebody wanted an Amazon with his PlayStation, went up downstairs and shot his mother in the head. I think that was
yeah.
So,
I mean, these kids nowadays are a whole lot different breed than they were in our time.
Absolutely.
And it's insane. Let's see. Okay, I was reading what Kirkland's I'll tell you, I know guys who were part of our reserves that had great jobs with the big three, the auto manufacturers. And when I was talking to them, these guys absolutely loved the whole thing about wanting to be a police officer. It was their calling and all that. But like one guy, I said, why didn't you just become an officer? He goes, because I didn't go to school to get my master's in engineering to work for that kind of money.
Right.
This gives me the opportunity to get out here, feel what it's like to be a police officer, but I still get to have my job that makes the big money working for this. Yeah, he worked for Ford and he was an engineer for him. There are a lot of people that you see reserves and auxiliaries for police department. A lot of these folks aren't police officers because they realize that the pay is crap and now pensions are getting cut like crazy. It's you've got to really want to be a police officer and it's got to be your calling to do it nowadays.
You're right about that. I agree with that. Is anything you do, if you're meant to be an athlete and you have the talent, that's your passion. You do it well. Yeah. It's the same if you want to be a law enforcement. You have to have that in you. You have to do it right, to be 100%, to do the job correctly and by the letter of the law and follow the oath. You got to have that in here to want to do that. I agree with that 100%.
Chad, what's your thoughts here, man?
Right. No, I agree with you guys 100% on every fact so far.
What do you think as a citizen looking into this? What are your thoughts about this DNA and the things that are going on with that?
As a citizen, I wouldn't have caught that about the DNA. I wouldn't have known about, if it's been 2 years, it might not be. I would have probably just but if that's what it is, that's what it is. If it tested positive, it tested positive. So I probably wouldn't have known that fact. Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about it. As a citizen, like with most citizens, you hear these things and you're like, wow, they found this DNA and all that. They don't realize about degradation of DNA properties, those kinds of things. Like I said, I do have a little more faith hearing this guy say that they've been retesting this DNA over and over again over the years. One of the points he made that was a real true point. Just because you find DNA, just because you find fingerprints doesn't mean you found a match. It's, the person has to be in the system for that stuff to be matched up. And, that's, a lot of people don't realize these things. They don't realize that DNA can corrode after 7 years and not be usable anymore. They don't know that if, because most people say, why aren't you fingerprinting this? Well, first off, and I'll give you a great example. I went to a home where someone had tried to break into a home. I did the fingerprints for them and everything like that because it made them feel better. But the reality of it was that the state police would not take those fingerprints and run them unless it was a major crime. It had to be something where someone was seriously injured or no longer with us, or it had to be an extremely high dollar value. Other than that, the state police were so backlogged, they couldn't run fingerprints. But I did the fingerprints just so that those folks felt better about it. But, in all honesty, the person didn't get into the home. The alarm system scared them off and all that. It was more a peace of mind than anything. But most people don't realize that nothing's going to come of those.
It's true. I mean, but I still take my hat off to all law enforcement. For the most part, they want justice to be done right. My hat goes off to them. They have a tough job in this today's society, um, with a lot of prejudice being called on the streets, a lot of gangs who have stepped up their game, and gangbangers just they kill for fun today. They don't have meaning no more. These little kids are recruited and they shoot you with a shotgun or an Uzi just to see how high you fly in the air as a joke. You know, it's a tough job, and they don't know they're going to come home at the end of the day when they start their shift. So I commend them. Like I said, I'm all for justice. I'm all for just do it right. That's all. Please dot your I's and cross your T's on every case, no matter how severe it is or how little it is. If you do that, I think we can make a turn in this country for a better place. I really believe that. So,
and sadly, there are you get people who are so frustrated in a case that they will forget to do something, or there's so much they have to do that they'll forget, oh, I needed to do this or I needed to do that. Those things will happen. You also have people who are just lazy and don't do it properly. And Brent had another point about it. You can't get fingerprints off of everything. All right. Folks think that, well, here's this piece of concrete that I know the person touched. Can you please look for fingerprints on it? Well, you picked it up with your bare hands and you just handed it to me. How many times have you touched on it? And number two, how am I supposed to get fingerprints off of concrete like that? Those are real situations that happen. I've had people literally come up and go, here, I found this. What do you think about it? Well, I think you just contaminated a piece of evidence.
It's like when you came to the academy, John, it was great. It was a great tool for you to learn what you needed to learn to graduate. But all your experience came once you get on the streets and was in real life situations. I think the academy didn't teach you. A lot of people say throw the book away when you get out of the academy. A lot of other experienced officers will tell you that. Forget about what you learned in the academy. Here's the real deal. And I understand that to be true. In some cases, but you gotta, like you said, you gotta want it. It goes down to you want this bad enough, and you care enough to do the job from your heart and to do everything, apply everything the right way, and take your time. We're all humans. We make human error very common.
And I got two points on that. When I went through a recertification course for my law enforcement licensing. And when I went in there, I was talking to the people who were giving the test, and it was at a sheriff's department. And they were, I was talking to one of the deputies, and they're like, look, don't answer the questions from what you know from your years of experience. Answer the questions like you just graduated from the academy and what the book says. And then the second point I got on it is I look at being a police officer like being a lineman with an electric company, like being a welder, like being a journeyman machinist. They teach you the basics and they drill in the basics in you in the academy. It's once you get on the street that you become an apprentice and you go through it to make your mark. They say a person is actually a rookie until they hit about the 5-year mark. That's when you become a journeyman. And then it starts growing from there. All depends on how busy your department is. If they're a more busy department, that you're going to learn quicker because you're going to see everything a lot quicker. But that's the facts of it. Kirkland, I heard police hate going to rich people's homes because they always want them to fill out a report, even for the smallest thing. I will tell you, I have literally had to go to homes of people who were affluent, wealthy, or just thought themselves important, that would demand that you do a police report because someone drove by and threw a piece of paper out of their car as they drove by, and expect you to fingerprint that piece of paper and go hunt that person down so you could write them a civil infraction ticket for littering. It happens. And the more money people, I always hated dealing with people who were in affluent areas because they always think that they deserve more than everybody else does.
Or the person that's got a politician in his pocket and keeps throwing the name up to the officer.
Oh, yeah. I always love that.
So
anybody who was, and all the officers that I worked with, they all knew if someone threw my name out there saying I'm friends with Poe, they'd laugh at them because all my friends knew Don't
Don't
you
do that.
dare.
Right.
Don't you use my name. If you use my name and they call me, I'm going to tell them, give them a ticket.
That's right. That's
They
fair is
did.
fair.
Let's see. Mandy Gonzalez. Howdy, Mandy. I collected DNA for a third paternity test. There were times where attorneys would question up about our collection practices to find a way to pin the results in a different direction. That's an attorney's job.
Right.
Attorneys' jobs are to find the kink in the chain,
right,
just so that they can get the case thrown out.
Yep. That's true.
Let's see. And Kentucky can go to jail for littering. I saw it happen. Yeah.
Yep.
I was down in Daytona during one of the bike week rallies. Guy on the bike next to me smoking, flicks the butt. Cop pulls him over, writes him a $750 ticket for littering.
Shame on him.
Yeah, that's, keep that little ashtray on your bike.
That's it.
Let's see. Okay, I was just reading something there. Let's see. There you go, Chad. Nuga.
No,
All right.
That's a stuttering John phrase. Noga is Shuey's mother's name, and John makes fun of the name because she passed on. So
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a couple of Stuttering John references.
Did he give you the call yet to get on?
No, not yet.
All right. He will.
Thanks for passing my number though.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. So we're going to have to start looking for our topic for next Sunday night. This is going to be our regular Sunday night thing here, folks. We're going to be doing the 3 Can Keep a Secret If 2 Are Dead podcast on this. I'm going to come up with a new intro for it and a new logo for it.
I think we're on the right track. I think we're making some good points here. Eventually, down the road, I'd like to follow this P. Diddy. This is very interesting to find out how many secrets he's got. This man is not a good man.
You know what I'm really interested in? Ashton Kutcher.
That's true.
Ashton Kutcher was good friends with Danny Masterson, and now he's locked in with P. Diddy.
That's right. It's amazing. And I believe you said you knew Danny personally, didn't you?
Not me. No.
No. Danny Masterson was the lead. Was he the head of the?
No, he was in that 70s show. He was.
That's correct. That's correct. I'm sorry. I had the wrong person I'm thinking of. Okay. But that's interesting.
Kirkland, I'm going to show you something here real quick.
Chad, great day, buddy. Thank you so much for putting us
together. I always have fun with both of you guys. You do my
great.
This right here was given to me by a lieutenant who was retiring. It was his nightstick that was given to him by his lieutenant. It was handed down to me. I never carried it. It's always sat here in my office. I never carried a nightstick as an officer.
You fight. I look at you, John, and I see a lot of Buford Pusser in you.
No.
Walking Tall was a very honest sheriff who was I think they burnt him. Didn't they burn him at the end there? He got killed by his own people, I believe, down the road. But he was a very, very honest sheriff. He challenged all politicians. He was a rough but an honest man that wanted justice, and I was a big fan. Never carried a gun, always carried that big stick. Put that gun away in his drawer and locked it up.
Axe handle. That's what he carried, was the axe handle. Yeah, and that, the real story of him didn't end like the Rock movie or anything like that. He ended up getting put out by the people of the town that were bad.
That's right.
Let's see. Yeah, Chris, that's one of the things I was talking about. He wrote a letter of basically saying Danny was a good person and I never saw him sexually assault anyone in my presence, or he never did it to me. Right. And he and Mila, boy, they got burnt bad for that stuff.
Yeah. You've seen the latest stuff that happened that came out? 120 people stepped forward, minor boys that he supposedly gave a drug to them and hurt them. These were 8-year-old boys. 120 families came forth.
Yeah. Well, when you listen to Cat Williams and what he's been saying for the last 2-3 years, where he's been coming out talking about these people in Hollywood and the music industry and how dirty they are. And he's been saying it, and people have been making fun of him. People have been saying he's a liar. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Now it's all coming to fruition. And Cat's being vindicated on a lot of stuff. So I'm not, let's see. Yeah. I doubt he's going to write a character. There you go. Character letter for him.
Yeah, Puff Daddy.
You know who actually, and it's someone that I never cared for as an actor, was that Topher Grace, the guy who was the star of the 70s show.
Yeah.
He didn't write a letter for Danny Masterson. He didn't want anything to do with that stuff.
Yeah.
Most of the cast wrote letters, character references for Danny Masterson for his trial. And I was just like, you folks just burned yourselves so bad.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of stuff we can do about John. There's so many things that we can do with this show. And like I said, I'm excited to dive into this every week. So
yeah, we're definitely gonna be diving into stuff. We're gonna be diving into stuff that some of you may not want to know about, some stuff that's gonna make some people mad, and some stuff that's gonna be shocking, but we're gonna put the truth out there and we're gonna make it so that everybody knows. Let's see. I don't believe everything Cat Williams says regarding the I don't know anything about this Illuminati stuff. I look at it like the Knights Templar and stuff like that. I don't believe it all. But he is absolutely right about a lot of the stuff he said about Hollywood. I'm really interested about some of the stuff he said about other people, talking about how P. Diddy wanted to have relations with him or someone else, and how someone else got a contract and he didn't. All right, Chad, you got any closing thoughts on it for us?
Oh no, this was fun, and like Joey said, there's so many possibilities for different ways the show can go moving forward. It's very exciting.
I think we found a team that gets well together. We're pretty knowledgeable ourselves. For me, this is probably a different angle for my people. For me to be screaming and yelling and ranting and raging over people in the Dabbleverse. So this is me. This is the real me. And this is me that cares, and I want truth and justice. And like I said, I was never mad for getting caught for anything I did. I faced it like a man, and I'm glad it's over with. But I just for my people that are here, the ones that are here that know me, they know I'm a decent person, and I just glad for the opportunity. So we'll see you next week.
I'm having a blast with this. And Doug, please say it ain't so. Not Sam Elliott, dude. Oh man, I love Sam Elliott.
Yeah, I love too. He's a great actor, Sam Elliott.
Oh my gosh. Oh man, that kills me. All right, folks. So coming up this week, tomorrow night, I am going to be doing a very special one. I found out that they're now saying Scientology is wanting to buy the Henson Studios lot. The Jim Henson Studios, where the Muppets were created. Oh, all right. And if that's true, you're going to take a cult that's known for the things that it does to children and let them buy the most iconic children's studio that there is. And then Wednesday night, we're going to be doing a mock public board meeting with Fat Grammy Mona, and we're going to have some other special guests that are on that. And we're going to be showing you how you can actually speak in front of a public board, like a public safety commission, a city council, those kinds of things, getting you prepared. We're going to come back a week later and allow you, the audience, to actually speak and read out what you want to say and do. And then we're going to talk to you about, how you can improve on it, or if you did things, if you did really good. And, so we've got those things coming up. I'm also going to be looking into the Remnant Church, and Gwen, I forget what her last name is, but the woman with the 8-foot tall hair that ran that cult out of Tennessee, and what is going on with that. And that daughter of hers, who looks literally like a zombie now, is talking about she wants to take over where Mama left off. So those are all things that are going on. Andrew B., thank you for being here. Andrew B., you are always welcome here. And folks, I see that our good friend, the Rabbit, is live right now. If you want to go over and do a room raid on Rabbit, by all means, get over there, say howdy, let her know that you're there. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope that this made you think about things, maybe educated you a little bit, but at the most, it at least entertained you. Yes. Thank you all so much. And as always, life is short. You get one shot. Make it count.
See you.